Mr. Deputy Chairman, sir. The general budget and the finance bill presented by the Honorable Finance Minister and the Lok Sabha has really dampened the economic sentiment in the country. It was expected that our economy was passing through a phase where the sentiment in relation to the economy needed a boost. This budget has ended up doing exactly the opposite. Sir, when I look at the economy of our country and our broad approach to policy, we had a thought which influenced most of our economic decisions, which was the pre-1991 thought. Indeed, 1991 was a defining moment. And post-1991, whether it was the Congress government led by Shri Narasimha Rao, it was a United Front government, it was the NDA government, the entire approach has changed. Even though different governments were in power, there was a lot in common with regard to the policy direction. And that's how this country the economy was seen as more positive. The budget, sir, is not merely an accounting document. It must also indicate a policy direction. It is my regret, sir, that this budget for 2012-13 unfortunately is a budget which is prepared with a pre-1991 mindset. So when we broke off from the pre-1991 mindset, and I have called 91 a defining moment, the then Finance Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, our present Prime Minister, made a speech which is regarded as a landmark speech while presenting a budget. In para 106 of that speech in 1991, Dr. Singh said, and I'm quoting that paragraph, "Recent years have witnessed an excessive reliance on indirect taxes for additional resource mobilization. This escalates costs, fuels inflation, and is regressive in its impact. Therefore, I have not relied on indirect taxes as a major source of resource mobilization. Indeed, the overall impact of my proposals for customs and excise duties is revenue negative insofar as the central government is concerned." Sir, the pre-91 approach of higher taxes, a more sluggish economy, less than modest growth rates, reduced economic activity, and you balance the expenditure with those higher taxes, was what this speech negatived. And consistently we've seen a rationalization coming through the next 2 decades. A large part of that rationalization was that you need an economy which is extremely efficient, which is extremely competitive, where you don't raise the taxes, but you increase the width and volume of economic activity. And that increase of width and volume of economic activity widens the tax base, and with a more competitive tax structure and a more enabling environment which is created for the economy, the finance minister will be able to collect a lot more and balance his budget. The approach I see in the last few years has gradually changed. And that approach which has culminated in this budget is, let us tax people wherever we can tax them. It is this retrograde approach which for the first time in the post-91 era is now making a comeback. Let us see the kind of lies in the present taxation structures that any one of us is living in. People may be having higher income groups or lower income groups, that includes the Aam Aadmi. You have decided, and every society decides, to tax people who earn. So you tax people for what they earn. You have now decided to tax people for what they spend. So if you see any one of our lives, you raise the excise duties. So manufacturing cost goes up. The Chinese products are going to competitively be far cheaper. And therefore, why alone in the international market, even in your domestic market, the principle is going to be that consumers are going to buy what they get cheaper. You make your products costlier. So you tax what I earn, you tax what is manufactured, you tax what I spend. So there will be various kind of central and state taxes, whether it's VAT, whether it is any other form of taxation. If any component of the goods or machinery is coming from outside, it will be taxed. Understandably, it has to be taxed. If it is coming from outside the city or the state, there will be entry taxes and octroys. You have now decided to tax all forms of services. There is a negative list. And that's going to create a huge inflationary impact. All of us need services of various kinds. So every service that we undertake, except those 17 negative list items. Sir, I am a morning walker. And when we get out of the Lodi garden, Mr. Duha is laughing, so is he. We have a Shulabh Shauchalaya there. From the 1st of April, we'll have to pay taxes every time we go in. That's the width of taxes that you have imposed now, because that's not on your exempted list. If you see every activity of life other than the exempted list, so for the water I consume, the electricity I consume, the road I drive on, the house I live in, a property I buy, the savings I accumulate. So we've now created a system in India where every activity possible that I undertake, the taxman has decided to put a tax on that, making us one of the highest tax societies once again. So that entire rationalization which we thought was coming post 1991, because of the kind of difficulties we are in, now seems to be given a go-by. If you take a piece of paper and on the back of an envelope starts calculating, the finance minister with the infrastructure available in the revenue department will know better. It's not merely the 30% odd taxes or the 2% educational cess. The entire tax structure taken directly or indirectly could be anything for an earning person between 50 to 60% of what he earns. And for the Aam Aadmi, who may not be earning enough to pay income taxes, this entire burden of this new age taxes which you are imposing will also be on him, because he also hires services, he also uses the roads, he also aspires to build a house, he also intends to buy a vehicle. He also needs services of various forms. Why is it, sir, that we have reached here? So when the UPA 1 was formed, and I've said this earlier in this house, there was a criticism which we used to make, or a comment we used to make, that the world's largest democracy cannot have two power centers. Now at that time you thought it's a political criticism. But I must say that you may have had ideological difficulties with the left in UPA 1, but at least within your own alliance, we could see some amount of coordination going on between the two power centers. Normally in a democracy, the Prime Minister is the natural leader of the country, he's accountable, he must have the last word. Then you had a parallel structure formed which started advising the government. This structure was outside the government. They decided to formulate various programs and schemes. Some of them may be good, some of them may not be so good. but they all had a bill which somebody had to foot. Today you have a situation where I am not so sure whether the two power centers are ideologically on the same page. Those in government, and you have some very experienced people in the government, who have ushered a change in the post-91 era, and you may have the alternative power center which feels that to get votes, you have to go back to the pre-91 thought. Now, this is the situation which we are passing through. The result of this is that in the area of economic policy and planning, it's the finance minister and the North Bloc which has the onerous responsibility of balancing the budget, so he has to tax us, because it is his responsibility to see that the budget eventually gets balanced. And when he has to see that the budget gets balanced, who decides the entire expenditure? Where it is to be spent is decided somewhere else. And therefore, for all the schemes and the ideas which are formulated outside the government, which the government has to adopt, you now find a situation that one office is deciding where to tax, another institution is deciding how to spend. And that is the reason that your economy is moving in a direction, to say the least, is becoming worrisome. So if we introspect the problem that we have reached today, and that's a grievance which the Honorable Finance Minister regularly makes, and there is a large public opinion in support of that view. I share that view. We have larger political differences. But for the sake of the country, management of the economy is cooperative federalism, a phrase which he uses. And he needs support from various sections of the society, including the opposition. It can't be managed particularly in a divided polity. Why is it that we have reached a stage that the kind of support which is required for economic policy, because the ideas is known, the roadmap is known, there may be differences on fewer issues, there could be larger areas of agreement on many issues. I think it's for the government to seriously introspect why it is failing to develop that consensus which is otherwise necessary. And a lot of it stems from the approach of the government itself, which is a political approach. I've said this earlier. You can see every section of this house. The left supported you for 4.5 years of UPA 1. And suddenly one day you decided, because we have managed somebody else, we didn't need them. They have felt let down, and you lost the trust with them. Two of our groups here, I don't want to say anything derogatory about anyone. How do you manage the two principal parties from Uttar Pradesh, the BSP and the SP? For 5 years and 8 years, you have cases hanging over their national leaders, and you are able to get them, and support of these two UP parties. The elections in UP have shown that family charismas are fading and are not able to get you the votes. Therefore, you need the CBI to help you to get the political support from UP as far as these two parties is concerned. Will you ever be able to build political consensus on economic issues?
Sword of Damocles is there.
All right, look at your allies.
It's not needed.
Unnecessary dragging CBI into it and saying the political leaders are being threatened because of this, not right.
Sir, look at your allies. They are standing by you through thick and by thin. Your ally from Tamil Nadu says a decision is jointly taken between a minister of the DMK and a minister of the Congress. One is in jail, the other is in power. What did you do? Let us just analyze this. Why are you so unsure as to how your ally from West Bengal will react?